If we can have Commissioner Harvey lead us in the invocation, and followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by myself. Go ahead. Please stand if you're able to do so.
Father, we thank you, Lord, for today, a day we've never experienced before in our life. Father, give us wisdom directly from your throne room on how to handle our situations today. Father, give us guidance, and let us be in your perfect will today to move Putnam County forward, Father, in this land development code and other issues that are coming up. We ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First, we'll start with public comment. This portion of the agenda is designed to allow citizens an opportunity to bring matters to the attention of the board. It is not reasonable to expect that the board will engage in debate or deliberation about matters on which the board has received no prior information as part of the agenda. Please limit your time to 3 minutes. We have one speaker card so far, Mr. Michael Woodward. Thank you, Mr. Woodward, for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Michael
Good
Woodward, 517 South Francis Street, Interlochen. I'm back to talk again about the gnarly issue of whether the location of emergency services facilities of any type or size should be allowed as a matter of right in CPO and C1. You may recall that the recommendation of the Planning Commission was to leave that requirement alone as it is in the current LDR where special use permit is required. I think what it really comes down to is the question of whether or not you believe that any type and any size of emergency service facility is automatically going to be compatible in any location, anywhere, on any type of street in CPO or C1. The current LDR reflects the position that that is not the case, that there will be places where some such facilities, some of the time, some places will not be compatible. Perhaps they could be made compatible with the addition of certain modifications to the site plan, which often happens in the special use permit process. I think it would be very, very rare for an occasion to come along where the decision would be made on a case-by-case basis by the Zoning Board of Adjustment or the Administrative Deviation Committee that a particular emergency service facility was not at all compatible in a location. But if that did happen, it would probably be for a darn good reason. And it wouldn't mean that facility wouldn't get built. It would just mean it would get built somewhere else, somewhere more appropriate, somewhere better. Better for the community, better perhaps even for the emergency services. You have to keep in mind that if you're going to say there are places that possibly are not always fully compatible, then you have to have a process for a case-by-case determination. And to have a good process, you need to give notice and opportunity to the public so that the people who have those professional offices, the pastors of those churches, the small business owners who know better than anybody else their communities and the traffic conditions on the streets and roads that they operate on, will have the opportunity to have some input into that process and perhaps bring to the table information that nobody had thought of before because they hadn't been living with it. Just one thing. I just want to say, I would not want to tie the county's hands any more than anybody else with the important goal of getting emergency services facilities located, dispersed throughout the county where they need to be. We just need to make sure that the exact places where they land are good places for them.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. Mr. Baker, are you doing a presentation? And Mr. Helms? I know we started to go through this last time, but now I think that we're going to concentrate on this entire LDC change. So I would like to see that you go through the sections, and then if the board has questions during that time, we can, or we can hold till the end. Does the board have a preference?
Depending upon the amount of questions that we have, we might need to address them as we go individually, because I think there's going to be more, I hate to say it, more questions than I'll be able to hold and remember till the end.
Okay,
and get
that's
the
fair.
quality of answer
Yeah, I was
want.
sort of thinking the same thing. That's fine.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Would you all like me here or in my normal position?
You're fine. You're
Okay.
fine. As long as we can see what are you bringing, we're just going over the paperwork, or is there a presentation on the?
There's no presentation prepared, Madam Chair. For the record, Zachary Baker, Planning and Development Services. I have the strike-through underline in front of me. I've also got a blue Pilot pen. It's my preference, so we can go ahead and get through it. At the direction of the board, do you just want me to read what this proposed changes would be?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So within the allowed uses for the commercial professional office zoning district, we have included emergency services by right, struck emergency services with a special use permit. We've also added accessory dwelling units occupied by owner or tenant of existing commercial use as a special use permit allowed use. As we look through 4581 for commercial neighborhood, we'll see the exact same changes. When we get to commercial retail C2, emergency services was already a use allowed by right, so the only thing changing here is we're proposing to add accessory dwelling unit occupied by owner tenant of existing commercial use as a special use permit requirement. And then for C3, same as previously mentioned, accessory dwelling units as a use with a SUP. For the, let's see here, it's worth noting too, in the 45-83 subparagraph A, we struck major and minor from the purpose paragraph, because later on in the text amendment, we've also removed the distinguishment between major and minor because we have no thresholds or measurable parameters by which we define a major or a minor.
Okay, because that was going to be one of my questions.
So C4, same thing, we're removing major and minor, and then we are adding accessory dwelling units as a use with a special use permit.
Okay, so let's just stop for a second.
Okay.
So to Mr. Woodward's point, why are we putting emergency services in? I mean, obviously, there's already a process in place, so why do we need to add these to each one of these options?
So the whole idea behind making emergency services allowed uses by right in these two zoning districts was, quite frankly, to make it easier for the county to build out that infrastructure as our community needs it. And it's worth noting too that there are siting requirements that both emergency services personnel looks at to make sure that, for lack of better words, they're in the middle of that service area that is deficient. But there's also going to be, do we have enough land to get 2 ambulances and a fire truck and parking for the staff that are there and the well and the fire suppression equipment and meet the setbacks and so on and so forth. So some of our subdivisions have smaller lots and some of them are zoned CPO and C1, but I wouldn't foresee an emergency service facility on anything less than an acre. So I don't know that we're going to have a huge issue with putting those uses right on top of some other use. It's also worth noting, too, that we allow hospitals by right in CPO, which has a lot more emergency service traffic than an emergency service station would have.
Okay. Commissioner Harvey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I also think, Zach, along these lines that, in the past we've had a committee or so look at properties where we need fire service or emergency services at. And I think it benefits us greatly to have it in there by right. I don't think anybody would mind having emergency services in a zoning district. I just cannot see that. So, and I also think it cuts down on the red tape of us going through our own process. Sometimes that bewilders me of why does government have to go through the same process? I realize we're government, but kind of we're own. I guess we're watching our own hen house, if you don't mind. But I see the point, but I think by right it gives us the opportunity to move faster and create a better environment. That's all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Alexander?
I agree with Mr. Harvey on that. So basically, we're just eliminating a step, but you're still going to have public input, and you're still going to have consideration before anything is placed, and they have the ability to come and voice concerns before the commission, but we have the right to move forward without going through the special use permit.
Well, I don't know that there would be a whole lot of public input because we would be effectively eliminating the special use permit requirement, but the Development Review Committee is a requirement for new developments, and that is posted. It's on the building out front here. We give a week notice on that. So
Right. So we have the opportunity to put it where it best suits, not just dictated by EMS. So
sure, and we could create another policy that for emergency services in these zoning districts, we have to let the public know that the DRC is happening 2 weeks ahead or whatever the discretion of the commission may be.
sounds good.
Remind me, and let's go through who's on the Development Review Committee, not the person's name, but the positions. We have a representative from Public Works. We have a representative from,
So you've got building, you've got planning and zoning, you've got public works. You also have recreation, DOT, Department of Health, St. Johns River Water Management District, and then we send it out to like the school board, FPL, Clay Electric. It's also in our packet here who our members would be. Give me just one moment. Sheriff's Office is one. Okay, so it would be planning, building, public works,
what
sheriff.
page are you on?
I don't have a page number, but it's section 45886. I'd say probably 2/3 through your packet.
And I remember us doing this. I just wanted to get myself refamiliarized with it.
Yes, ma'am. So
886.
voting members of the DRC would be planning, building, public works, sheriff, emergency services, recreation, property appraiser, Putnam County School District, Putnam County Fire Marshal,
I see.
and Putnam County E911 addressing. Non-voting would be Department of the Navy, Naval Air Station JAX, County Forester,
Page
all,
32 and 33.
all applicable utility providers, water management districts, both of them, St. John's and Sewanee, Florida Department of Transportation, Florida Department of Health, Florida Department of Environmental Protection, Agriculture Center, Natural Resource Conservation Service, and the Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay. And as far as accessory dwelling unit occupied by owner tenant of existing commercial use, is that because you're seeing more people buying commercial properties and living in like an attached or above apartment? Is that what you're seeing?
Well, so, no, ma'am. Truthfully, the comprehensive plan within the commercial future land use category allows for residential development for those business owners or business tenants to live on their property for security purposes. But our land development code has no provision by which they could make application for those residential units.
Okay.
It will also serve as a future proof so that we can have, commercial on the bottom and residential on top. There would need to be some work done if we would ever want to intend that I own the business, but I rent to Brian, who's not in any way affiliated with my business. What we're currently proposing, we wouldn't have to worry about that. It would be the owner or the tenant. And through lease agreements or deeds, they would have to prove that they are the owner or tenant.
Okay. Are there any questions so far? Yes, yeah.
I'm a little reticent in falling behind the, allowing the emergency services with just by right. I mean, if there were some assurances or language put in there that it can be public noticed and there can be ample logical comment, I may be okay with it. But it's, I'm all for having the robust services and having them where we need them, but it may not be often that we get in too much of a pickle there. But I'm comfortable having that decision come to us, and us as commissioners have to make a hard decision. So anyway, that's just a little commentary there.
Is there any action to be taken from that comment?
Special use permits wouldn't come to the commissioners as it stands. So as it's written today, it would go through a committee who could grant the special use permit. But remember, in order for us to build a fire station, that starts at the board. And the process of what the design looks like and the budget for that and the location, this is simply with respect to regulations on permits, if it's eligible for the permit, right, to occupy that space. So it's not, emergency services may be a bad example because there's going to be a litmus of steps a new fire station goes through, like the one at Baden-Powell. We went through numerous years of legislative appropriations and conversations about locations and why this area and the radius by which it needed to be in order to help our ISO ratings, and all of those conversations take place. This, with regard to Zach's area, is regulating what checklist needs in order for it to be issued a valid building permit.
And not everything is going to be a fire station. So like when we look
Sure.
when we look at the one in Floor Home, it's a, I don't know, maybe a substation. It's a double wide trailer that's sitting there, a work trailer where they house 2 ambulances and they rotate. So that's would still fall under the emergency services.
It would. Our goal is to move away from that model and move into the synergies created when you put fire and rescue together, of course, in future instances. So yes, that just kind of big picture idea. This is only a piece of the puzzle that you're seeing with respect to how the public would know a new emergency services facility was coming about.
Commissioner, are you done? Commissioner Alexander.
So what you're telling us, there's still plenty of checks and balances in there. And we're just taking out what looks to be an unnecessary step to streamline the process.
Yeah, well, so the goal of when Zach reviewed it was emergency services fits by its very nature in commercial districts. So aside from not bypassing the board in any other respect, but aside from all of the other checks and balances, the intent of the commercial district and area that it operates in is very compatible with what you see with an emergency service operation.
Okay. All right. So it doesn't sound like there's an action item on that. Is there? Or are you presenting an action item, Commissioner Newbold? No, I'm not. Okay. All right.
All right, as we move along in section 45-106, this would be use of structures. Staff is proposing the addition of non-residential farm buildings for bona fide farms as an accessory use that can be established on residential property prior to the primary use. There is a statute, Ms. Young and I went over it. There's a statute that essentially says if you have a bona fide farm, in other words, a green belted property, it doesn't have to be zoned agriculture. It can be zoned residential 1. But if you are a bona fide farm, you are entitled by the state to have a non-residential farm building for the purposes of that farm. So we're more or less just aligning with statutes, whereby statutes would override local zoning anyhow.
Okay. I think that one makes sense. Everybody's good? Okay. Yep.
And 45-109 for accessory uses and structures allowed in each zoning district. We're really looking at the table here, which is table 2.04A. And we have added, for the accessory dwelling unit, we've just made it with a special use permit with conforming commercial use. So just aligning the text amendment with this table. 45-110, we've added a provision which would allow property owners to place a well or pump house which are less than 60 square feet and less than 8 feet in height be permitted within any setback given there's at least 3 feet of separation from the property line.
Okay. Does anybody have any issues with that? All right, moving forward.
Madam Chair, do I have your permission to skip over like commas and spaces?
Oh,
or-
yeah.
Okay.
No, I want to hear them all. I like, not to.
All right. Let's see. Some of these code sections are long. Bear with me.
Section 45-131, is that where we're at?
Not yet. We'll
Okay.
get that one. Not yet.
Oh, come on, I'm ready.
Still in 45-110.
Oh,
We
I
got
see.
rid of an extra premise and an extra use that was within the text.
I'm
All
not
right.
seeing that.
You're not seeing that?
I saw 45-110, but you just, 11.
No, it's 110.
Oh, okay. You're just saying strike through premises.
Strike through premises and strike through use. They're
Yeah.
leftovers.
Okay.
All right, 45-131. Recreational vehicles as temporary shelters. And please keep in mind during this discussion, these are the additional standards for a temporary occupancy of a recreational vehicle. So, with that said, our code enforcement department, and Z. Lawrence has stepped up behind me as the expert on this matter. Code enforcement has been having some difficulty enforcing our policy with the magistrate for code cases. So it is at the recommendation of the code enforcement department that we include the following sentence. Under no circumstance is an RV to be stored, left, or abandoned on a vacant property. Vacant is defined as having no dwelling unit on the property. That same sentence would be added to subparagraphs 2, which is residential zoning districts, and 3, which is agricultural zoning districts.
Commissioner Harvey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the one that gave me major heartburn. And because the last few words, subject to removal. And my question is, by who?
So we have struck that language. We would not be including the subject to removal or RVs in violation of this provision are subject to removal. That would no longer be in the code if adopted as presented today.
So it would still come under a fine, basically? Okay, I'm good with that then, as long as, because I don't want to spend taxpayer money trying to go in there and remove something and nothing to get back. I mean, good. I'm good with that then, thank you.
So, is anybody else?
Yeah, so we would have the ability to compel them to clean up the property by imposing fines and putting a lien on the property until such fines were paid or before the vehicle was removed, correct?
Getting several nods of affirmation right now. So.
Good. Yeah, I just want to make sure that we've got some teeth for you guys to go out, to clean this stuff up. I mean, that was the ultimate goal, I believe.
And then additionally, they could seek the same forgiveness that other code cases do in front of the board. Once compliance is reached, if the board would like to forgive those soft costs, they would go through that same process.
So I have a different perspective, so I'll just go ahead and share my perspective. I think this is a property rights issue and we're taking away somebody's property rights. If you have a piece of vacant land and you want to put your camper there and leave it, I don't know why it hurts. If the neighbor says it's an eyesore, well, guess what? If we start getting rid of every eyesore in Putnam County, you'll need a much bigger LDC than this. And from a safety perspective, I'm understanding that one of the reasons you guys are wanting to do this is because it gets rid of people living in campers. If that's the case, then why don't we adjust or make our LDC stronger for the fact, we already have codes for people living in campers. So is this mostly because we are having people living in campers?
Yeah, so this was established because of the amount of cases that we have going before the magistrate. So currently, we're sitting, and this is a guesstimate of this, so we have over 2,000 cases open right now for code enforcement. We have 659 of them are related to people living in RVs and it could be care of premises and living in an RV. It's a variety of those, but as a whole, the 659, so it's about 40%-ish of what we have our open codes cases are for RVs parked on vacant pieces of property. And we're not talking about a guy parking it there for a week or a month and the grass is cut. We're talking about derelict that is out there. That's what these codes cases are. And so meeting with the magistrate, and Zeke can speak to more of this, in meeting with them, this gives them the availability that the magistrate says we have better teeth to not throw out the case. Because if we don't take a picture every single, for the amount of days that are there, they throw it out. And so he says we don't have enough in what we have currently. And this is what our recommendation would be, to give us more teeth to build the derelict out of there and to find them. It's not going to clean up instantly, right? But it gives us availability to do that. So that's why this is.
We don't already have that though? I thought we already have that. If you're living in a camper, you get fined, and the process works. It worked on the neighbor behind my house. I mean, they were living in the camper. Our codes enforcement went out, left them a note. Well, I don't know what happened, but all I know is they no longer live there. And they moved the camper off the property.
So again, we're talking about the people who are not compliant. And so when they're not compliant, they say they're not going to move. When we take it to the court case, it's not working, and that's why this is being given to us. And what we have, and I can let Z speak to more of that.
Yeah, that would be good.
The first thing I'd like to say is it's a hardship, it's a burden of proof is on us. And if they deny living in it, we prove it. We don't work 24 hours a day. We don't work on weekends. They say they come and visit one night here and one night there. It's us against them. We go by neighbors. They won't come in and testify 90% of the time. We have one occasionally that will come in and say, I see them there all the time, every day. That helps us with our proof. But otherwise, the burden of proof, we have none. So we're trying to focus more on the derelict part. If it's not kept, if it's not registered, if it's not tagged, if they have trash and debris everywhere, we subcategory into a care premises, because that RV without a tag on it, or if it's derelict, flat tires, it's care premises. I don't even worry about the RV code. So that part is a lot easier. You can prove that. The pictures show it's not well kept, it's not maintained. They're definitely causing a problem.
Okay, so you brought up a very good point. Does somebody have to call this in?
Yes, we do have to have a complaint from the public, and it's public knowledge.
And right now, we already have a lot of people that are living in campers. A huge problem that we have is nobody's calling it in.
Yes, ma'am, that's true.
I mean, because some people, I know obviously we've got 650 something that somebody has called in.
I know
So-
several in my own neighborhood that are living in campers. Nobody's going to call it in because they're polite, they watch out for people, they keep their yard maintained, and they help others.
Right.
And we don't want to call them in because it's not going to do anything to them. They have nowhere else to go.
Right.
And they will leave and go back to up north or wherever they're from during the hurricane season. They're only there during but they're, like I say, it's registered, it's tagged.
Right.
It follows the DOT regulations, which that's where it's just, we're just trying to get rid of the ones that are derelict and really causing problems. That's usually where there's either squatters, somebody that doesn't own the property, and they're staying in them. And even for a temporary amount of time, I don't want to have to prove they're living in it. They're just staying there enough to cause the care of premises and giving the neighbors grief.
Right. I mean, I guess whenever I see these things, and I know we're making changes, we don't get to pick and choose, right? I mean, we don't get to pick and choose. And so if you have a neighbor who comes down and stays on their property 2 weeks a year and leaves their camper and then goes back and comes back and they're in and out, they're allowed to do that. However, under this rule, they wouldn't be allowed to. But the idea that that we're saying, well, we probably wouldn't bother them, but the rule's still in place.
If we get a complaint, we have to go by
Yeah,
the
and
rule.
if you get the complaint, if the neighbor's mad because they don't like them, then they're gonna call it in, and then it's up to us to make them move their camper.
Correct.
To me, this is a hard stop, because you cannot have your camper on a piece of property. I gave the example yesterday to staff. My son has a piece of property, and his buddy got divorced, and the buddy got the camper out of the deal. The wife got the house. He didn't have any place to go. He said, hey, where can I put my camper? I'm gonna go live with somebody else, but I don't have any place to store my camper. I don't really wanna pay. And my son said, go ahead and go park it on my property. It's nobody's doing anything on it. So he's up there parking. And then that's what's happening. Nobody's complained. It's not been an issue. He's not doing any dumping. But if this were to go into place, he's now illegal. And my son could get in trouble because he was nice enough and kind enough to let his buddy park his camper there. And that's a good example that I've used, because, but I understand there's not that many of those compared to the ones that are causing problems.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah. Commissioner Harvey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate that conversation. Let's find a way to solve this problem. So what I'm hearing Commissioner Wilkinson say is there's a vacant piece of property. What if they grew blueberries on the property? Can they have a accessory structure on the property being a camper, for example? I mean, I understand the plight, but before you answer that, because I'll give you time to think about it. The last meeting we were at here, and we had this come up, I was headed home, and they were digging a trench from out Friday to get garbage picked up. They're not paying that. We are now. We're going to pick up the tab on that. And if you go past my house, around the corner, there's a motorhome that has been driven into the woods and left there on a cleared lot. So I understand the plight of both. I think maybe we can find some type of compromise here, that if it's property that's maintained or continuous to property that I own, maybe that's the solution. Because I understand. I mean, there's good people out there, there's bad people out there. But at the end of the day, these people are buying homes, and they got a travel trailer sitting beside them that somebody's living in, and we know that. So answer how we can solve Commissioner Wilkinson's, because if we can make it a farm-type operation.
So the other thing, and I can get, we have talked through this thoroughly as a staff, and so we have come up with a multiple of ideas, and so I'll let, maybe JR wants to talk a little bit about, we talked about how when we have a RV at a site, there's no 911 address, and so if something does happen at that area, so for me, the power, water in and out, sewer, water well, and then a 911 address is probably one of my, in my brain, my top 3 things that I would want to have at that site, because if something does happen, they're going to call us, and I can't speak for them, but I know they have trouble finding the places, and so I know that is a problem that we would have to address. So if it was we talked about an SUP that they would have to do to apply for it, so it'd give them an avenue that we could do that, and that's definitely something we can walk down. There are going to be some qualifications, I think, that we need for just safety-wise, because we need to look at that electric, right? And so to make sure they're doing it correctly, we don't get someone hurt or cause a fire. And so that is something maybe we can go down. I have no trouble doing that, and I don't know if that's something that you would like for us to do. We have talked through that, but it would be really up to you guys to give us direction. We're
And
open
in
to
the
it.
example that I'm given, I mean, there is a 911 address, and he keeps the grass mowed, and he pays over $1,200 a year for his vacant lot. So he's paying his fair share.
Yes, ma'am.
So it's a little bit different. It might be an anomaly, but when I'm telling him, when he's looking at what we're voting on, he goes, Mom, I cannot believe you're even thinking about this, because I'm going to automatically, I can't park somebody's camper on there. And to say that somebody has to go and pay when you own land, that you're required to go park your camper on a paid lot instead of on the property that you bought, and if the intention truly is we're getting rid of people who are living in campers, then why don't we make the code that that is for living in campers stronger or harder, or give you more under that part. If that's really the issue, is we've got people living in campers and they're living there illegally, and you don't have enough teeth, then let's change that part of the code instead of creating a new one that's taking somebody's property rights from them, where they have to go, if they've got an extra camper, they have to go and put it in storage. That's where I'm at. I totally support the problem that we have, support you guys in understanding that we have a problem with people living in campers in the county illegally, and that there's some health and safety issues, and some of them are doing it decently and their property's clean, and then you've got a whole bunch that aren't. But again, people have to call it in. So if people aren't calling in, she can't go out there and just start looking at campers on pieces of property and start writing tickets or code violations. So I just feel like for me, it's a property rights issue. I'm sorry, Commissioner Harvey, were you done?
Well, I don't know if I'm done. I mean, go ahead. Oops, I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
So something, maybe the piece of the puzzle that we're all missing when we talk is, you're right, what Z and the team brings is a case that originated because someone's living in the camper.
Mm-hmm.
And we have codes that allow that, but the county is responsible for the burden of proof of occupancy. And the quasi-judicial system of the magistrate essentially has stipulated to the team that unless you can prove to me everyday occupancy, then they haven't met the metric of living in the RV against code. So the magistrate's response back was, if we prohibit the vacancy being an undeveloped lot, right? And this is where we try to get ideas from you guys. Where's our end goal? Where are we trying to get to? Then the magistrate does have teeth without the over burdensome tasks that it would take to prove that every day for the last 90 days this person's been living in the RV, because it can't be vacant, it can't be abandoned on a vacant lot. And so what does it look like if we find a happy medium? Where's y'all's vision as to where we go and how we are able to assist the citizens that are calling those complaints in with people living intermittently or even full-time that that the codes officer can't prove is occupying that place to the magistrate? How do we?
Is there, I don't know, I think back to, when I was a kid, we had to take our car down for an inspection each year, but is there any way we could enforce an annual inspection for RVs in Putnam County that would give them the opportunity to go out and look and see if it was livable and if it was compliant with standards that we set forth, either for storage or for residency?
I mean, first, you're talking about creating a whole new set of regulations, cost, manpower.
I know, and I don't know what the
Violations.
solution is, but I don't know.
Yeah.
'Cause that would give you the ability to come and see if they were living there without 90 days worth of proof, and if they were also hooked up, because you've got the potential of raw sewage being dumped, you've got poor electrical connection, which is a safety and a fire hazard. Again, you don't have a 911 address, and if they're tied temporarily in the power to the house, you're putting that house at risk, their septic system at risk. They're not paying trash fees, they're not paying any type of taxes, so there's got to be some way to regulate it, but there's also got to be some way to allow people to use their property and have their own domicile that can't afford a standard house at this point. So, I mean, I don't know where we go.
JR, you're recognized.
Yeah, I just would like to speak on an operational standpoint. Commissioner Alexander just hit on a little bit. Ours are the ones that don't have a 911 address, and we get paged to 100 Main Street or a medical emergency on Main Street, and it goes for 2 miles. We don't know where we're going, right? And in our world, time is of the essence. I mean, I'll use yesterday, for example. The south side of that fire, 5 abandoned home sites. They're not registered with our county. I can look it up through GIS. They're not supposed to be there. But they're inside of that area yesterday where our crews are actively engaged in a wildland fire operation. How many of those out there? I mean, and that's the problem, is us trying to find them, right? We look on GIS, we look on the aerials, we look at, using all the technology that's available to us to formulate a plan on how we're going to protect all these structures. Well, now there's 5 of them sitting out there on the south side of this fire that I've got to commit a resource to every single one of those during this operation to try to protect the homes or the abandoned mobile home or whatever. And we've completely had to change our tactics, right? And I know we're speaking about RVs. Let's talk about sheds, people living in sheds. Before, when we got paged to a shed fire, that was a very low risk call, right? Because people don't normally occupy them. Now we're running 911 calls to people in sheds. So now we have to change the tactic and the approach we have to take for that. So we're putting our crews at risk because, number one, they are not up to a building code standard of a normal house. So when we put a crew that's going to have a roof that collapses sooner, walls that are going to fail faster, are not intended for the heat, now we're putting crews in there to try to make sure these things are not occupied. Because anymore, we're going to more occupied dwellings that look like a shed, look like an RV, that aren't there normally. They haven't gone through the process. So they don't come with smoke detectors. They don't come with any type of built-in thing. So we're putting stoves in these things without a hood. So the construction is a lot different of these things than what it is to the normal day-to-day living. And from my side, it's very difficult to find these things because people just randomly putting them on lots out there, and then they have a medical emergency, we can't find them. And that takes time. And that's the part from our side that becomes difficult. As we're talking about this, we need to wait for them to register, whether it's a 911 address or something, because a lot of our parcels are not 911 address. They don't get them until they come in here. They start to pull the temporary power or the power for the construction site. They got to pull a well permit. They got to pull a septic permit. But then they're putting them on site without any of these necessities in order to drive a 911 address for. Now, you may have one out there. Somebody went through and made a 911 address on a piece of property, but a lot of these don't even have them. And a lot of times the people that are in these things, they don't even own the property. Right? So they abandon them on somebody else's land. Just like yesterday, the landowner is going to be responsible for that fire, right? It's not the person that would potentially be staying in that RV. It's the landowner. So whenever somebody goes out there and they have a campfire, that homeowner is going to be held responsible. When you start taking bulldozers and aircraft and all that stuff, just yesterday's scenario, that bill can be quite substantial to a homeowner that has, or a landowner that has no idea they're even there.
So to your point, if this LDC had been put in place, would that have made a difference yesterday? No, it wouldn't have, because somebody would have had to call it in. Somebody would have had to call it in and say there's 5 people on this property or 5 structures on this property. If they haven't done it already, by changing this code, they're still not going to do it.
I take your point, but to another point I'd like to make is when our crews do call in to code enforcement to tell them about it, they don't have the tools to go out and fix it because our fire marshal will report to code enforcement when there is a fire on that property, and they report it, and then it goes to the magistrate, and he can't do anything about it because he doesn't have the substance.
But they can already do that under the LDC with them living in a camper. If you've got 5 structures out there and people are living in it, does our LDC allow them to do that?
No, but that's where the concern is. That's the challenge that we're bringing to you guys. The LDC doesn't, but the magistrate doesn't take the fire marshal's word or Z's word if she's visited 3 times over 90 days as burden of proof of occupancy. His interpretation for the magistrate to take action, to impose a fee, and to say that they're in violation of that is that they would have to go out every single day and prove occupancy.
Commissioner Harvey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Along the lines of Commissioner Alexander's conversation about a special use permit, we do that with the medical hardships, right? So on medical hardship, you have to renew that every year, right? And
So we have 2 different types of medical hardships. One would be for a secondary dwelling unit,
Right.
like a mobile home or a house. That would be annually through a temporary use permit, and it also goes through the building permit process. We do have a provision in the temporary RV occupancy that would allow property owners to utilize, whether it's a natural calamity, a health risk issue, loss of property, some hardship like that would also benefit them through a temporary
all right,
occupancy
so let me go down
license.
this road. let's say that we're going down the road of special use permit, and you, Zach, get a special use permit to put your travel trailer on your vacant piece of property. And on that special use, we ask you if you're going to put power, we ask you if you're going to put septic, we ask if you're going to put garbage out, and then we charge you a fee. And we also charge you a fee every year to come by and renew that special use permit. And if we see that Zach has put his garbage out there, then we know that there's an issue there. We already know that. And we're allowed then to come onto the property because we told you in the front when you ordered a special use permit, we were going to come and inspect that during the year. Maybe that solves the problem, and maybe Commissioner Wilkinson's son's friend pays $25 for the special use permit, or her son does, and then every year he renews it for $25. I don't care the number. I'm just saying maybe that starts solving the problem, because the problem right now is, again, and I agree with Commissioner Wilkinson to a point, we can't go on the property. I can't turn in my neighbors. I mean, I don't want to start doing all that. Y'all can't drive by and look, but if you had a special use permit that had, here's what we're going to be following you on, you can go check that out every day. You don't have to worry about occupancy anymore. You just have the permit and it spells out. Because, again, you put garbage out. I saw your garbage cans. You don't pay a garbage fee. We're going to assess you now. Those types of things. Just saying. Think along those lines.
Yeah.
Thank
So to continue, and I know we've got some lights on, but I just want to make sure we all understand. So section 7,
Is something that was proposed by staff as, I guess, if the commission wants something in place, then that would be staff's recommended language to start with.
okay, I do appreciate that very much. Commissioner Newbold.
JR touched on this idea of people living in sheds and tents and all this jazz. I'm running across this situation in my district, and apparently there's no prohibition of that. You can live in anything you want here. No prohibition to live in a tent, a barn, a shed. Is that the case?
No, sir, that would not be the case. So a shed would be an accessory structure. And when you get into, it's actually a code section that's in your packet, 45106, it touches on accessory uses and structures that are allowed, in which it states, in residential zoning district, an accessory structure may not be placed on the property and used prior to establishment of a principal use or structure unless the property owner has submitted a development permit application that includes plans for the principal structure and a site plan showing the location of the proposed principal structure in relation to all property lines and other structures, with the exception of docks, boathouses, and once amended, non-residential farm buildings for a bona fide farm. So if somebody approached us and said, I'd like to put this shed on my property, and they didn't meet the criteria for the placement of that shed, we would not issue a zoning permit or a building permit for that use. They could apply for a special use permit or a variance to have it there for a temporary time.
And that's really not the problem. It's the ones that don't come in and ask, and they put 6 of these on their property. Then how do you go about remedying that?
So that one we actually are able to take care of. So we either have his name's Justin Dunn. I don't know what his job title is, but he goes and he gets unpermitted construction. And then we've also got our code enforcement staff that can go out and get those uses that are not adhering to this particular section. So in that case, oftentimes the remedy is an after-the-fact variance or special use permit, or maybe by then they're ready to submit plans for a home of some sort. But we do have a method in place to address those issues, the sheds. again, though, it would depend on property owners calling it in for us to be knowledgeable about it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Suggs?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The only concern, and I spent some time in code enforcement, and Z, I understand where you're coming from, it's tough, is the issue is we're charging our code officers to go out and do a violation, notice a violation for someone living in an RV. Special magistrate's not accepting testimony and saying that without a daily proof of such violation that we're not going to be able to move forward with it. So I see where you guys are coming from. I can see where Chair Wilkinson's coming from. But out of all due respect, I want to make sure that we see both sides of the property right issues, because those folks that are living next to those folks and dealing with that, they have some property rights too. So it's a very slippery slope that we're on. But I'd like the dialogue, but we really need to try to find a way to be able to give you guys the tools that you need, because the last thing that we want to have to do is be able to tell someone that's filed a legitimate complaint that we can't do anything. That's a tough position to put staff in.
Commissioner Alexander?
Yes, ma'am. Regarding the vacant properties that Mr. Grimes was referencing in the fire yesterday, what potential is there to force property owners to have, if constituent safety is paramount, at the end of the day, that's the top thing. If you have an emergency call, you need to be able to go get to them. That they are required to have a 911 address for any property that there is any domicile on. And if they don't, then we can forcibly remove or fine them until such time that they comply. Right, but if we have that information.
I think we have that in place already. I think this is just a situation,
Well, he
Mr.
said he had 5 of them out there.
Yeah, but they threw up some campers and temporary shelters. Yeah, it wasn't where there was a bona fide structure on the property.
Yeah, no, this is just a
So
lot.
some, yeah.
Palmettos, drove the RV through the Palmettos, parked it there, set camp,
But they're living
And a lot of times, there's nobody even living in these, to be perfectly honest with you. They're just abandoned, and I think that's part of their point, is that they just get abandoned. They're not coming back. It's not like they come visit them frequently or anything like that.
Right, but if there's no 911 address, that would give them the ability to grab that or to find that property owner to allow them to pull it out of there.
I can't speak to that. I don't work in codes, but sometimes that'd be difficult too, because sometimes there's been a 911 address issued for the property that they never did use the intended use for it. So I can go there today and apply for a 911 address, right, with the intent of pulling a permit or well, septic, whatever. That's your first stop, right, is to get that 911 address. It does help. You're 100% right, it does help.
That was, talking about that Main Street example that you used earlier being 2 miles long, at least you had a point. for
Sure.
those people. So, there's so many different facets and problems in this one issue here.
So,
Where you start.
so Zach, on your new added language, so when you're at paragraph 3, subparagraph 6, page 14 for us, and this is under agriculture zoning district, excuse me, under no circumstance is an RV to be stored, left, or abandoned on a vacant property. Vacant is defined as having no dwelling unit on the property. Then paragraph 7 gives them an out. 7 says parcels greater than 5 acres may be approved to have an RV as a temporary use if approved by special use permit, subject to the following conditions. I know we haven't got to that yet, and this has all been added since our last review. So I appreciate that. I think I can get there, but when you're at paragraph 6, don't you have to say except for paragraph 7? Because you specifically said under no circumstances is it to be stored, abandoned, or left on the property, but then under on paragraph 7, they can get a temporary use.
Yes, ma'am, and at the
I know you just,
decision
this
of the
all
board,
came
yeah.
together last night, right?
Well, not last night, but
Yeah.
we would be able to add, unless pursued as follows below and
Yeah.
however it needs to be
Okay.
read.
Okay, I'm getting there with you. So you're saying vacant is defined as having no dwelling unit on the property. I don't know what the wording is, exclusions except for whatever the wording is for paragraph 7. So paragraph 7 gets me there because in the situation that would allow somebody, if they have greater than 5 acres, and I think you're looking at more of where you see somebody's just going to leave a camper for good purposes and just storing is probably going to be on an agriculture zoning 5 acres or more. I do think that. I mean, we have no idea how many we have of those situations. The biggest problem we have is people are going out and putting up or staying in places that they don't even own. Yeah. Okay, do you want to go over that with everybody, or do you want to move on?
Yes, ma'am. So the language reads for item 7 and beyond. Parcels greater, so this is in the ag zoning district. Parcels greater than 5 acres may be approved to have an RV as a temporary use if approved by a special use permit subject to the following conditions. An E911 address shall be assigned to the property before a special use permit application can be submitted, and the applicant shall provide proof that an E911 address has been issued. The RV must be registered with the Florida Department of Motor Vehicles. The applicant shall provide proof of current registration at the time of application for the special use permit. The RV and the property subject to the special use permit shall be in common ownership. The RV shall be lawfully connected to an outside source of electrical service, potable water well, and septic or sewer facilities that have been installed pursuant to permits issued by the Planning and Development Services Department, the Florida Department of Health, or a municipal utility service. Failure to provide proof of such improvements within 90 days of approval of the special use permit shall render any approval null and void, and the RV will be subject to paragraph 3B6 above. The special use permit shall only be valid for 6 months. If renewal of the special use permit is not complete, the RV will be subject to paragraph 3B6 above.
Okay, so I'm good with you, except for on 7II. I don't know why it has to be common ownership, the RV and property subject to the special use application. You're saying the RV and the property has to be in the same name?
Yes, ma'am.
Why?
So that I can't go buy 5 acres and then let a bunch of people rent their RVs on my land.
Can I have to?
Go ahead.
Can we just limit it to one? And as long as you have like a lease agreement?
Or a family member or something?
Yeah, or something. Can we limit it to one RV with a lease agreement so I can lease to Brian the $1 that he can park his RV there? I mean, as long as we show that, there's something there, I don't have a problem with that.
We can.
So why don't we limit it to number and have some type of chain, like some agreement in place?
Maybe not a lease, because then you're getting into commercial activities. Maybe just allow it for immediate family.
I would be good with that. That's
I mean,
where I'm at.
we can
Yeah.
do written permission from the
Okay.
property owner.
Okay, something like that, some change.
Yeah.
Okay. Does
But
anybody?
the thing so it would have to be the property owner making the application.
Correct.
Unless they designate that individual as their agent.
Okay.
But with written permission from the landowner, we'll be able to get there.
Okay.
Yeah, initiated by the property owner is good.
How many times can you renew?
We didn't define that, but the whole idea here is temporary RV
Right.
occupancy.
Yeah, and I'm good. I think 6 months is fair. I'm fine with that part.
Well, Commissioner Harvey brought up a good point. I mean, if somebody, a special use permit's $150, so $150 every 6 months, do we want to be able to cap it at twice, once a year? I mean, because otherwise we might end up with people that rather than a mortgage and paying taxes and all the other stuff, they're
Well,
just paying $150
We say if
every.
renewal of the special use permit is not completed, but we don't signify how many times you can renew.
Right. Well, and that's, again, with the whole intent here being temporary, I guess the implication here was you could renew it one time for a total of 1 year, but after the year, it'd be kind of up to y'all how you want to.
I agree, then it no longer is temporary, to your point. I do agree with you on that.
Okay.
See, I can compromise a little.
All right, so I'm making notes here, so we want it to be only one RV. And written permission from property owner for others to stay there.
And this is to park your camper there. It's not staying there. I mean, right? This is for parking your camper there?
No, ma'am, this would be for
Living.
occupancy.
For both. You could do both.
I mean, yeah, you could do both, in
All right, written
theory.
permission from property owner.
And then it can only be renewed once.
Okay?
Renew once.
That's on 5 acres or greater.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct. It'd be on 5 acres or more. Real quick clarification. If I come in and I get my special use permit for my land and then I renew it 5 years down the road, 2 years down the road, can I renew it again ever?
I wouldn't see why not. We're trying to we just don't want to see that turn into a permanent home.
So they would have to essentially wait 6 months before.
Returning for a year or whatever. Yeah,
Okay.
so you have to put something in there.
Okay. We can
How
add
large is
another.
that piece that your son's keeping his?
He's got almost 8 acres.
8 acres, so he qualifies under that. Gotcha.
And I'm just using that as an example.
Sure.
I mean,
Okay, and we will add except for in item 6 above. All good?
Yeah, so where did we fall in the residential district?
So there is no similar provision in residential zoning.
They're just not allowed unless you're building a home.
which
Uh,
we
we-
already have that in the
So
LLC.
you can, right, essentially there's 3 ways you can get away with temporary resident or occupancy in residential districts. It's site clearing for 60 days, home construction for 180 days with opportunity to renew, or if you're visiting a friend or family member at their home, and it can be their RV or your RV.
I don't know that we made the situation any better.
Well, we'd have to ask them.
Well,
I mean-
yeah, we can let you know in a few months.
No, I mean, if we're trying to prevent people from living in mobile homes in a travel trailer, we just gave them the ability to do it. And
Right.
what I was trying to do is just simply say is,
Yep.
people should be able to store a camper, not live in it, but just store their camper. But the point that from your perspective and the magistrate's perspective is, you can use that to get rid of them versus the whole, you gotta have what do you gotta tell them you gotta record every time you went out there, and you've gotta testify that they,
Yes, ma'am. We just testify to what we see and what we deduce from evidence that is really substantial. I mean, all of this kind of misses the point. The only people that are going to adhere to this are the honest folks.
that's exactly right.
Good people that want to just store their camper there and come visit and fish once every 2 or 3 months for a weekend. That eliminates them, and they're going to do it. They're going to abide by it because they're the good people. We're not getting any closer to getting rid of the bad ones. And that was kind of what we were all discussing. For 2 years, we've been discussing this. If you could find a way to allow people to store or park their RVs on a vacant lot by permit or whatever, that excludes everybody else. Then we can go after everybody else. And people won't be so afraid to call them in if they know we can get them. That's why they won't call us, because they know our hands are tied. They know we can't prove they're living in it. I don't care. Let's not try to prove they're living in it. They got a derelict camper on a lot. They didn't get a permit for it. Got to go. Period. End of statement. So allowing people to get some kind of weight that they can be there, those are the good folks. They're going to pay the money. They're going to adhere to our rules. If they have to have well and septic and power to do that, great. 911 address comes along with all that. to solve that problem, only the good people are going to do that, then that excludes everybody else. We can go after all of the others. And 80% of those others end up being care premises, has nothing to do with RV code. We can go after them for the derelict camper, untagged, unregistered, unkept property, making a mess. We can go after all of those people without question.
It seems like a much more straightforward process.
I'm kind of simple.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No,
What-
I appreciate your input. I'm glad you're here and that you are giving your input.
What kind of documentation does the magistrate require?
Well, if like I say, they're unregistered and untagged, easy, photograph, proof. If they got flat tires or the windows are busted out, derelict, photograph, proof. But that's why I say,
If
we
they're
don't
lit- but if
even
they're
want to
lit-
try it, we can't even try to prove they're living in it because you would have to be 24/7 to prove that. People hang up a clothesline after they went fishing, they were there staying 2 nights out of the month. They gonna hang up a clothesline, sure. But if they've maintained their whole entire property and kept it, and when they leave, it's nice and neat. I know a lot of people that pay monthly to have their yard mowed around their camper, and it's only stored there. Some of them don't ever spend the night there. They just come, change clothes, get in their boat, go out, come back, and leave. Those are the people I'd like to help.
Right.
Allow them to do that because they'll pay the money. You know, that makes us a little bit more money and takes a whole lot of cases off of us so that we can go after the ones that are not
But
supposed to be there.
what I'm asking is, what does the magistrate require? A picture every day of someone being there or something similar to that?
To
So
prove-
you'd have to go out, yeah, for proof of.
To prove they're living there,
Yeah, for what time frame?
enough
30 days,
to
45.
satisfy him. We've never really been able to do it, but we've usually had something else to piggyback off of. If he just says, I'm not going for the living in, but definitely the care premises, unregistered, inoperable vehicles, things like that, we get that order easily. It's just the living in, I don't, if they admit to us they're doing it, then we can testify that they told us they were actually living there. That's when it's 100%. Other than that, it's just kind of a,
I don't know what our rights are as the government and the county, but I've got game cams that transmit back to my phone every day of who comes and goes and what's going on at my property. So I don't know if you need 45 days of somebody coming and going on that camera, or you need 30 days, or what we're allowed to do as far as surveillance on a county right away.
I'm not sure that would infringe on anybody's right to privacy.
Yeah, I don't know,
So
so-
that would get into a legal matter that
So I'd have to ask Mr. Commando, but,
Have
you
to-
know, there are options.
Commissioner Harvey?
So if we're not gaining anything in this conversation, we're talking agricultural 5 acres or more, right?
That's correct.
Is that our main complaints, or is it the 75 by 125 lot?
It's a smaller lot, especially in, yeah.
So if we're not, in this business, the unintended consequences always catch the good guys.
And that's where I'm at.
Yeah, unfortunately.
That's
So we're beating a dead horse here. If we're really trying to go after the 75 by 125 lot owner who pulls it in and could care less about it, those are the people we need to go after. This might be too much, not enough juice for the squeeze.
So if you leave that under no circumstances is an RV to be stored left, blah, 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 under paragraph 2 for residential zoning districts, but you just took it out for agriculture? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. Why not just take it out for ag? And then if that becomes an issue, come back to it. But, honestly, it's not the issue right
Yeah,
now.
I don't want to give, I didn't want to I appreciate what we're trying to do, but I just want, if somebody has a big piece of property and they want to store their camper there, they should be able to.
Couldn't we
So,
put that,
As I hear it, we want to leave 2F, but we want to remove 3B6.
And 7, were you putting 7 in as a way to try to help with 6?
More or less, the whole idea there was to give some provision that could allow for a more seasonal occupancy.
Yeah, and we do have that. And right now, they have 14 days they can stay unless they're building a,
Well, as it reads right now, for both residential and for agriculture, it states RVs may be used as a temporary shelter on residentially or agriculturally zoned property containing an existing dwelling unit without need for a temporary use permit under the following conditions. And then it lists,
Oh, I see, 90 days.
Yes, ma'am. So the whole idea was that if I wanted to come visit Aunt Commissioner Wilkinson, I could come and stay in either your RV or my RV at your house.
But if she's got less than 5 acres,
No, it's okay, I got more than that. I'm
I'd
good.
still-
You can come stay at Auntie's house. Yeah, I see what you're saying. But then you went on to say, under no circumstances could it be stored. So they could come and visit and take their camper with them. You were just saying they couldn't leave
Leave
it.
it.
Correct. Unless it's your camper and it's your home, but that's a different story.
Could we not put a permitting component into this and give the code enforcement officers enough teeth to give them something to work with?
For what? To allow?
The storage.
Oh, this one, you have to have an existing dwelling unit.
Yeah, so when it comes to vacant lots and people storing RVs, that would become a non-conforming use, because recreational vehicle storage is like C3 zoning district. I mean, we would have to do some other legislative work in different sections of the code to tie it all together, but it could be done.
Yeah. Tony, did you want to speak?
Honestly, there's too many directions that I could go in with this, and I think that this really more hits on what Z runs into, specifically in West Putnam, as far as what I've seen myself and just running in those areas. It's not so much, yes, you do have, I've driven by places that I'm assuming could be drug dwellings, rundown campers. It's not even so much that. It's so many different issues. It is, myself and county administration saw this the other day. There was a brand new camper from out of state that I'm assuming owns this lot. He is setting up solar panels out there. No water, no septic, no overhead lines running to power his camper or whatnot. So I'm going to assume that he's not, a resident at Dunn's Creek that spends half their time in Michigan, half their time in Florida, and, down here to Brimfish. He's looking to live on that resident. I'm assuming. I've also had instances of people with campers in right-of-ways where I have had to tell them, you cannot live here. Well, I haven't cleared off my property yet. I said it doesn't matter. You can't just park your camper in the right-of-way. I have an instance right now where I have had a resident call in West Putnam, and specifically the first call that I got from her, she said, well, come up the hill, he will get stuck. So my first assumption was, well, you know what, maybe they're looking to put a mobile home there, or they're building a house, they've got to have the porta potty there for construction. No, there's 2 handy houses on that lot. The porta potty is there for their use, I guess, to maybe stay compliant or otherwise. I wish I knew the land development code better. I really do. But there are, if that is something that I run into also as well with the residents. They do not want to call in on their neighbors. Whenever they read articles in the Palatka Daily News about some dispute in some of those areas and someone gets shot, that was actually told to me by a lady that lives in Isley Boulevard south of 20. And I actually called in the code case on the individual, because I personally, I'll put my name on anything. Doesn't matter to me. But, and actually that worked out, because the individual that we sent the code case in on, he is greatly cleaned up where he's at. I really think that's a success story. But there's 200 different places that I could tell you about. There's a place on Main Road that is outside the MSBU between Baden-Powell Road and Royal Way. The people started out with a camper. It's a bright yellow camper right there on the side of Main Street. You can't miss it. They have since moved in a mobile home. Whenever I say a mobile home, probably late 70s, early 80s mobile home. There's no power, no septic, no nothing tied to it. I mean, I don't know how they moved it in there, permitting-wise or otherwise, or who they found to bring it in for them. But, at that point, well, then we're missing out on revenue from the county for permitting and anything else. So it's I would implore anyone to go out there and just ride and look. And really, I mean, I think that is the biggest thing that Z or myself or anybody else is going to run into, is that we want to see it cleaned up. And I understand that it's not an easy task to do that, but there's got to be something moving forward, because I started this job in 2023, and just seeing the slide presentation earlier about building permits in the county, and everything seemed to go up in 2022. I can already see the growth, like the wrong growth is coming into those areas.
Yes.
It really is. I mean, handy houses, outdoor showers. Whenever they've got 4 or 5 pallets screwed together with a shepherd's hook for a bag of water, they're living there. So we want to just do whatever we can to disseminate the information that you need as far as helping specifically code enforcement out to where they can try to, I don't know, move forward.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I get it. I have a lady I know that does a lot of home health care out in that area, and I get pictures every day. So I recognize what you're saying. Yeah, and that's the thing, we've got to come up with some way to give Z and code enforcement the authority to do something about it. But I don't know, it's a tough job, because there's people that are disadvantaged and they're trying to do better, and it's tough.
Oh, I totally understand that, and believe me, and someone that has specifically had to deal with at one point in time looking to build a house or buy a house, and I understand it's not easy. No. Nothing's easy, especially if you're on a fixed income, single income, or otherwise. But you still need to try to do it the right way as much as you can.
That's right. Absolutely. And you can't have a reputation as a county that fosters this type or allows this type of development.
Yeah.
And so we have to figure out a way to allow Z to do her job.
And that brings up another point. I mean, even if that's all I did was call in code cases, say twice a week, I guarantee I could probably come up with another 300 to 400 within the next, 2 or 3 months. Easy. Mm-hmm. I find them all over the place. So, like I said, we want to make sure that you know what we see, and if you have any questions, please ask.
Yeah, we obviously don't have all the answers, and we will take input from, staff, the community, you guys. We are 100% behind finding a solution. Mr. Suggs, Mr. Grimes, Ms. Young, Rich, anybody that can provide some input, and we need to find a solution.
Okay, so back to paragraph 7I through 1 through 4. The intention of this paragraph was for making people have the E911 address that are going to stay in a camper.
Yes, ma'am, in the ag zoning district on properties 5 acres or more, to give some provision for seasonal occupancy without the dwelling unit being on site.
Okay, so this is what you wanted? This is what staff wanted? This is what the magistrate wanted?
Section 7, 1 through 4 was a recommendation by the Board of County Commissioners to staff to incorporate some allowance for those larger tracts of land to be used on some sort of temporary or intermittent occupancy for recreational activities, and to find a path. The direction staff was given was to make some sort of recommendation back to you on a path that would keep the integrity of health and safety at the forefront for all of the community, but still allow that citizen who may own a larger tract of land and wanting to use it recreationally to have a camp of sorts.
I gotcha. Okay, thank you. Okay. Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Harvey, I'm sorry.
That's fine. Tony, I appreciate your comments, and you're right. We probably both could write out there, but that's not the discussion we're having right now. 75 by 125 lots, I stop and say to people, what are you doing? You've got to have a home here before you do that. And then you'll see them pack up and go somewhere else, probably deeper in the woods. You can actually access that property by health safety reasons, right? When you see that they're putting their sewage on the ground, or something like that. I beg to differ, because the other week, I was told that they could go on the property for the health
DEP
safety.
and DOH can go for
DOH
sewage.
can.
Yep.
But the county does not have any authority to go with code enforcement to go on that private property.
So if we see, and Tony sees it, I mean, I know he sees it every day, but if he sees it, he can turn that into DOH, and they can go out there and inspect the property.
They can, but most oftentimes, they're not putting it on top of the ground. They're digging a hole, they're putting a barrel in it, and they're doing it unpermitted, the old style way. And DOH can't go out there and probe it and decide, do they have a septic or not? They just have to, if they happen to find some other code issue there, they can turn it into codes, and that's, the tough way around, but they're.
Talk to our legislators, and I will tell you that some of them are getting an appetite to revisit this, because even in their own neighborhoods, they're finding this out. So I can tell you that.
In the case that was in my neighborhood, they said they didn't live in the camper, but then they provided codes with receipts for having their camper pumped out over like a 6-month period. So if they weren't living there, I'm not quite sure why they needed their tank pumped out.
But they're an example that really kind of voluntarily complied, right? The minute
yeah.
the codes enforcement case was
Yeah.
opened, had that gone to magistrate, we would have all been powerless with the way the code stands today. And that's where the magistrate kind of gave some feedback with, okay, guys, we understand it's a problem, and it certainly is something to be addressed. And that's where this started, was magistrate's recommended language for the solution. And then where we go, how we get to the end solution is, and what that end solution looks like, is why the whole team of staff is here trying to get from you guys, where are we trying to get?
Okay. Well, I think we've beaten this section to death.
All right,
You okay
so
with 7?
Yeah.
As I understand it, 2F is to remain, 3B6 is to be removed, and 3B6 will then become whatever 7I through.
Go back. I'm sorry, what? 3B6, 2F stands.
2F stands, 3B6 is to be removed, and then 3B6 will become all of the language in 7.
With the immediate family or something
as
in that
discussed.
nature.
One RV, written permission from the property owner.
Yes.
And then a renewal one time or whatever the case
Okay.
is.
Okay.
And then I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the trash assessment fee is typically linked to a certificate of occupancy for a building permit. So there won't be a trash assessment fee collected through an e-permit or a driveway permit. So I don't know if there's something.
May I address that?
Absolutely.
Because being on the solid waste committee before, if it has the potential to produce garbage, we charge a fee there.
Mm-hmm.
There's no accessibility on that property.
But if we're allowing a travel trailer on there with an E911 number, it has the potential to produce garbage, correct?
Sure.
So, and we don't let them off the hook on solid waste assessment if it has the potential, correct?
So when they come in for their special use permit, should there be something that trips that? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying, yes.
I just don't know what mechanism that would be, because typically it's a building permit, a certificate of occupancy for a home or business or something similar.
Maybe,
You got to eat this elephant one bite at a time, guys.
I know.
All right. Thank you for that note.
Just leave it in there?
We're going to leave it alone, I guess, for now.
I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
I don't know that you're going to have that many of these.
I know.
We don't know until we really get down that road. I don't know.
Okay.
The areas that are really concerning are the ones where the lot's right there where you can see it.
Can I ask a question before we go
You can
to?
ask whatever you want.
So I know Jay's not here to answer this, but doesn't Waste Pro have certain numbers that they pick up? And don't they notify us if they, I mean, I know not all the time, but they're supposed to notify us if 4 more residents on the street. Go
Yes, sir,
ahead, Jay.
they do. We have a solid waste roll, and y'all approve it every year as part of the development of the budget. But that roll is based off on the permits. When the occupancy is completed, then we add that to the solid waste roll. And so you would add it at any time during the year. But there is no mechanism by which we would add a solid waste roll by anything that could produce trash, because anything in the county could produce trash. And so there isn't an automatic application or even way to build that individual. I don't send a trim notice to a camper. It's not paid through the RV registration at DMV. And that's where your solid waste fee is assessed after that initial partial year when you begin occupancy.
But I have had a case where a customer complained their garbage wasn't picked up. Jay went out there and found out that they didn't even pay the assessment, and I don't know what became of that, but.
So that's correct. So let's say the solid waste adjustment fee, or the solid waste adjustment committee at some point had deemed them exempt, and then she had repaired that home into a state where she was now occupying it. So that scenario certainly happens. It would again go back through the building department, and they would pay a partial fee for whatever prorated portion of the year that they would continue to get services until that next year began, and then it would come on the trim notice.
I got it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, all this is temporary in nature, right? Supposedly 1 year at the max.
Well, I mean, it would allow provisions for them to be there for 6 months, day to day.
Gotcha.
And how we handle garbage pickup for the time of occupancy would be a question maybe that we need to bring Jay in for.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I know, and I'm kind of speaking out of turn because I'm not King Trash himself, but I've heard that we have non-residential contracts, and I don't know if it would be helpful if we could make them have a small dumpster. That might be a solution.
But that's your non-residential, but then you'd be talking about a small dumpster for a camper and probably not a good landing zone for the dumpster or anything like that either.
And in all fairness, Commissioner Palacier's not here today, so I don't see us passing this today, just me personally, unless I've got, 3 commissioners that are just definitely want it to go through. I see us as this is a workshop. We're working through these issues. When Commissioner Palacier gets back, he can watch the videos, and we'll unfortunately have to go through this again, or at least touch on it and figure out how so I think we have some time to see how we can resolve some of these issues.
Yes, ma'am. All right, moving along. 45-165 for artificial ponds. Staff is proposing the addition in the setback section. Unless approved by a variance, existing and proposed residential structures and accessory structures shall conform to the waterfront principal building setbacks of the applicable zoning district as measured from the top of the bank of the artificial pond. In subparagraph D, we are also specifying that a site work permit must be obtained for the completion of the pond.
Uh-huh.
Good. Just let me know when I need to stop. And 45-186 for mobile home park. A lot of the changes herein were just making consistent the capitalization of manufactured home park. We are also suggesting to strike the language in B9, must be submitted to the Public Works Department. Approval of the design and implementation of this plan must be obtained from Public Works. That's done through DRC. Striking entirely, emergency storm shelters shall be provided as required by Article 10 of this code. No such regulations exist. And 45-401, we're adding canals to the different types of water bodies. And 45-501, Table 7.02A. The only change that we're seeing here is in the residential 2 zoning district, making the impervious surface area 50% to be consistent with all other single-family zoning districts. -611, subparagraph D. This is where we're removing D2 specifically. This is where we're removing they are further categorized into major or minor collectors. (616), this section comes from our Public Works Department. Subparagraph B2, proposing the addition of or high-performance polypropylene for cross-drain material.
Isn't that the one that I didn't care? I mean, if there's a future design that's better than PVC or...
Yeah, this is essentially where we stopped last time.
Well, can we just say, okay, yeah, I think you did, unless otherwise approved by Public Works Director, I'm fine with that. Because there might be a brand new product that comes out that's better than everything we're dealing with.
Yeah, so
Sorry to bust in, Madam Chair, I apologize.
there was additional language proposed in Table 7.10K, approved pipe material. And this is where it actually lists the different types of material. So we've added galvanized to corrugated steel pipe or arch. We've struck bituminous coated corrugated steel. We've added side drain only for the corrugated high density polyethylene pipe. And then we've added corrugated high performance polypropylene. So that's kind of what's being suggested by Public Works. 45-636, to clean up some of the language for use of easements for driveway access. And A, we've added shared. And then in C...
Madam Chair? Zach, this is where I kind of, I think we stopped actually here because I was telling the board how important it was. But driveway access serving up to 2 residential, because I've got some in my neighborhood, one that has 4 residential ones that are served by 1 access.
Yes, sir, and that would be a private road to Public Works standards. So this section...
It was never a private road, it was just an easement. But it happened years and years ago, 40 years ago.
Right, and so this would be for new
New.
easements, yes, sir.
Okay.
And we typically utilize this whenever we have a lot split for a piece of property that has frontage on a county-maintained road. They would provide an easement to the property behind them.
So now if I was to have 4 homes, I would put in a private road with a cul-de-sac type situation.
You would design it in accordance to our private roads, which
Yep,
is
okay,
stipulated in
okay.
Article 7, Division 10.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So, in subsection C, we're adding the restriction, in any event when 3 or more residential units are accessed by an easement, the access shall conform to design standards for private roads.
Yeah, that's good.
And 797, this is for previously approved developments when we are trying to vest these developments for use. We're proposing a reduction of the minimum width to be approved by the Public Works Director from 35 feet down to 30 feet.
Where are you at?
That was in 797, 45-797, C1.
Okay, mine's not red line. Oh, there it is. It's just not red line. Okay. Got it.
And 45-836, subsection 8, we're striking, the applicant shall provide the department the name and contact information, i.e. address and phone number for all abutting property owners that will be impacted by the deviation. We do this on our own already.
Yep.
And then in 13, we're just clarifying, so the reduction amounts are staying the same. We're just making them read a little easier. So front yard reductions up to 20 feet, so long as 10 foot of separation is maintained between the structure and the property line. And then it's similar language for the rest. Side yard reductions up to 15 feet with as long as 3 foot of separation is maintained. Rear yard reductions up to 15 feet so long as 3 foot of separation is maintained and there is no water body. And then Appendix 9 is after these reserved LDC sections, 45, 837 to 850. And Appendix 9 is associated with our cross-section of a right-of-way grading plan. So we're seeing similar language here. In other words, for ingress and egress access, which is less than 30 feet in width, has to go to the Board of County Commissioners for approval. Anything greater than 30 feet would be approved by the Public Works Director. And then we're also including language stating, in all cases in which a new access right-of-way is proposed, such right-of-way shall conform to Article 7, Division 10. 45-886, we're proposing to reinstate the voting and non-voting members of the Development Review Committee. This is language that was previously approved.
So why did you strike out A? You
So-
just made it one sentence.
Yes, ma'am. So A is when we we last amended this language July of last year in 2024, and that language was the Development Review Committee shall be composed of representatives of various county departments and regulatory agencies having a direct interest in new development and redevelopment, including but not limited to planning and development services, public works, emergency services, Sheriff's Office, and Department of Health. Whereas the DRC really functions better if we know who's required to be at those meetings and who's not necessarily required, so that we have a quorum and we can pass them.
Okay.
In 961, we're striking a leftover this code. I'm skipping punctuation stuff. And 45-1032, the scope of section for subdivision review. We're just clarifying what a lot of record means. And then we've added legally conforming parcels existing as of July 1, 2024. That sentence is relevant when staff is trying to decide, can they do a lot split or do they have to do some other subdivision type?
Hey, Zach, we're going to take a few minutes break.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Zach. This workshop will now reconvene. We are on section 45-1032.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Did you want me to
Yes.
Okay. So in 1032, we're just specifying what a lot of record is, and then added legally conforming parcel that existed as of July 1, 2024. This information is relevant for staff to determine if a lot split is eligible or not. In 45-1033, we are replacing exempt subdivision with boundary line adjustment because that's what the exempt subdivision is actually doing. 45-1047, remedies for illegally subdivided lands. There was a typo in a referenced section in A1, so we clarified that. And then for C, we're saying that a vesting determination could be approved by the Board of County Commissioners or Administrative Deviation Committee.
And we are saying Administrative Deviation Committee. Why?
Because within the vesting determination code section, it says that the property owner has to exhaust all administrative remedies before seeking board approval. And then unrelated to code language, I brought a vesting determination to the BOCC about 2 years ago. And at that point in time, the request was if the density is higher than 4 units an acre, it goes to some other board before it comes to the BOCC, so they had a recommendation. In that case, it was the Planning Commission.
Okay. So it's still a double process. They have to go through the Deviation Committee. It says or.
Yes, ma'am. So they would go to the Administrative Deviation Committee first.
Okay.
And then if the Deviation Committee couldn't get there, then we would send it to the ZBOA, and then at that point, you all would be able to pull it from ZBOA to BOCC.
So have we added an extra step in this process?
We're not adding an extra step in the process. We've already been going through the ADC. Our code is very intertwined, and in many places, you can point and say it has to go to the ADC. But in this remedy for illegally subdivided lands, it didn't point to the ADC. So we're just making it consistent and clarifying here.
Okay.
In 45-1051, C1A, this is new language that's being added. The intent is to make the subdivision process easier for a property owner, or quicker, I should say. So at the time of submittal, except for a Type 1 subdivision subject to Florida Statute Chapter 177, any application for a type of subdivision may include a signed document from any professional surveyor and mapper certified in the state of Florida, other than the surveyor or surveying firm that prepared the survey depicting the proposed subdivision, verifying that the survey map and legal description are correct.
Okay. What's the review process? I got it.
Yep. All right. And under 45-1052, we've added some provisions here for what's called a de facto lot split. This is something that county staff have been doing for my tenure here. We've just added legislation in place so that we can kind of create a system by which someone can pursue a de facto lot split. And without reading the entire thing, a de facto lot split is when a single parent parcel is bifurcated by a road, a railroad, a body of water, a parcel under separate ownership that's been developed, so on and so forth. So rather than having them go through a survey and going through a lot split, they could just get a legal description for the property and record it, break them apart.
Okay.
And then there's been some changes in Article 13, our definitions. We added a definition for canal, which is a natural or man-made portion of submerged lands which connect to a navigable waterway, provide a habitat for protected species, and are permanent in the sense that massive improvements are required to restore canals to unsubmerged lands. We added a definition for de facto lot split with the sections that is applicable for the de facto lot split. Let's see, I can't recall. I think development has a very lengthy definition. So on A13, we included and or culvert or other drainage structure. Getting to the end here. Within the definition of structure, instead of it saying a thing construction, we put an improvement constructed. In the definition for water body, we included the word canals, and that would be it.
All right, are there any questions from the board? Go ahead, Commissioner Alexander.
As the junior member of this team, I have a question regarding how we move forward with this. Are we capable of approving this as presented if we remove the section regarding the mobile home the RVs for further discussion later?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
But remember, if you have a 2-2 vote, it doesn't move forward. It's
Understood. And in the essence of time management, it sounds like most of this is pretty cut and dried, and to prevent having to review all of this again, I would like to.
Come on, man, you don't want to go through this again?
No, I got other things to do. I think Zach and staff have done a great job on the majority of this, and there's just a few questions left to move forward on the rest of it. But I think if we pull that portion of it, if it's okay with you guys, I'd like to make a motion that we approve as presented, removing the portion pertaining to the RVs.
Madam Chair, may I?
Yes.
Commissioner Alexander, we can actually approve this language today. I think the direction that we can do is from this workshop, tell staff what you want us to bring back for the first of 2 public hearings.
So we need 2 on this?
Yes, sir. And today wouldn't count as 1.
And that's kind of the one thing just to be mindful of is that if you later decide what you want the RV regulations to be, you're going to do 2 hearings for that too.
So our moving forward, then we would have to approve that section for this first meeting, and then we would follow up with a second portion of our second viewing of this at the next meeting for final approval, and then we would still have 2 meetings regarding the RV with the anticipated changes.
So I suppose if the appetite of the board is to move forward on the easy stuff, right, and take out RVs, the staff direction would be bring us back everything except for 45-131, and then how we address 131 would be another workshop or some similar meeting as what we're doing today. But nonetheless, when you change the text, there has to be 2 BOCC readings.
Yeah, so what we'll do today is, to your point, and I think what you're trying to accomplish,
Yes.
is that we recommend to move forward with the changes that we have talked about today, and then it would then go into 2 public hearings, 2
Yes,
public
ma'am.
meetings
For the RVs.
for the entire package, and then that way we're not splitting it up. You could do the whole thing has to be brought twice, has to be brought forward twice.
The whole text amendment has to be brought twice. And then if we remove a section out of what's brought to the next 2 meetings, at any point when we change that section, it would have to go through 2 meetings.
Yeah, so for your point, instead of waiting until Commissioner Pellicier's here, you're saying we could go ahead and move forward with what changes we've discussed today, and then we would move into the 2 more public hearings, readings, which are required.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the motion is, you want to talk about the changes, and then he could just talk about the changes?
So I guess my question to the commission would be, when I bring it back for the first reading, first of 2 readings, do we want the RV language in or out?
We want, you're on the floor, not me.
I think there's still a lot of discussion on RV language, so we may have to readdress that. But I think that the changes that have been requested here can be made and brought back before the board for an initial reading. And then the secondary thing, I believe that the RV portion, we are going to have to revisit in another workshop. And then, because there are going to be more changes to it. So it'll still have to go for another couple of readings. Is that correct?
Okay, let me, is
Thank you. Rich agreed.
that correct? All right.
So when I bring this back, it'll be the packet that we have today as discussed. So it'll include the RV section and the changes to, I want to find it so that we're all on the same page. So I will bring back with the packet 45-131, the changes for 2F, which is the residential subcategory, the removal of 3B6, which was the circumstance is a RV to be stored, left, or abandoned, and then 7 will be replacing 6.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to bring
Yes.
back,
Yes.
Correct.
and everything else, of course.
And everything else.
Okay, so you have a motion on the floor as discussed.
Do we need a
Do
motion?
we need a motion? What do we need to be doing here?
I'm sorry, commission direction to staff.
All right, that's our direction.
That's- Yeah, just, I'm waving support.
Yep, we're all good. I think we're just tired, so
Yeah.
it's been a long day.
Make it happen, Zach.
Good. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you,
is there anything
commissioners.
else?
Thank you for your patience with us, Zach. Thanks for explaining.
Oh,
Yeah,
not
you're
on this topic, thank you.
No.
Oh, so the second part of our workshop included county and city joint meeting agenda. So I asked you guys if there was any particular subject you wanted to discuss with the city, and this is our time to discuss this openly, because it's the only time we can discuss these things. And so, items that you would like to see a joint meeting on. Commissioner Harvey?
You know, Madam Chair, I have done this when I was chairman. I think it's a great idea. We did it with Palatka, we did it with Interlochen. I don't think we ever went south and picked up those. But I do want to caution you, because the last time I think we had one with the city of Palatka, it was more about their annexation versus ours. And we know our boundaries, and our boundaries don't ever get questioned. It's their annexation that gets questioned a lot, their boundaries. So I'm all for moving forward. If the conversation is just about annexation, that's their, I mean, you kind of have to stay in our lane, if you will, and I think that's up to them. But if there's other topics that we can discuss, I'm all for it.
When you say annexation, you're talking about extending utilities without annexation, like I had mentioned at the meeting?
That would
or-
be great.
But
But if we're talking boundaries, you know, if they want us to try to do something with their we can't do that. And that's what the conversation came about the last time.
right, so you started one direction and ended up in another.
Big
Yeah.
time. Actually, what we started with, the mayor folded up his stuff and decided he was done. So,
That's the way we can roll too, if we need to. Extended utilities without annexation for economic development was the conversation that we had
correct.
before. All right, that's a great subject. Commissioner Alexander?
So that's going to roll right into our initial discussions on an interlocal agreement regarding the impact fees, correct?
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, we did not, yes.
And I'm with Mr. Harvey as far as starting in one direction and ending up with another. I think we need to have a set, rigid agenda and adhere to that. So
All right,
I'm probably one of the worst offenders about getting off on a tangent. Y'all steer me if necessary, and we'll try and steer them too. So
okay. All right, Mr. Suggs?
Yes, ma'am. Just wanted to follow up on Commissioner Harvey's conversation, and just to notify the board that I have received a email communication from the city manager that they would like to talk about municipal boundaries, but I did tell them, the city manager, that I thought that conversation would be best if we started it at our level first. and then move to the board at a future date if necessary.
All right, so we have 3 new commissioners, so let's just say what we need to say. The conversation that happened before was about squaring up the municipal boundaries.
The conversation, and Mr. Grimes, please help me out if I get something wrong here. The previous regime wanted to square off the boundaries, but at the same time, they want those municipal boundaries, but then also be able to pull the revenue from those parcels at the same time from the
Sure.
county to the city.
Right.
And so that conversation, each time it was brought up, had never really got off the ground a whole lot, and it certainly didn't at the board level. And, from what I understand, probably about 3-4 years ago, is that Mr. Grimes and his folks, as well as the city fire department, fixed that situation amongst themselves without having to get all of us involved with it, and how they want to reciprocate services back and forth. And so it hasn't came back up since then. And so, but that was a couple of opportunities for them to bring that to the board, and it never went anywhere. And obviously, it wants to come back up now, but knowing the history that we had, I told Ms. Carty I thought it would be best if we started that conversation at mine and her level.
Well, correct me if
to the
I'm
board.
wrong, and Rich, you might be able to, the state legislators a few years ago was going to do some type of cleaning up boundaries for municipalities. I remember that a bill going through the House or something about that. But, again, we don't change our boundaries. Our boundaries are the same. It's the cities that continually annex out and go out. And that's the problem, and we can't do anything about that. I can't fix their problem. As much as I would love to go, y'all need to clean this up, I can't. And they can't expect us to clean it up because, like I said, our boundaries don't change. So, Ed, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I think also, I'll use myself as an example. We have 3 commercial properties. Out of those 3, only 2 of them are in the city boundaries. One of them's not. And quite frankly, I don't want it to be. And I shouldn't have to unless I want it to be. And I think there are other citizens, especially business owners, who feel the same way. They have stayed out of annexation for a particular reason, and whatever it may be. And so they shouldn't be forced to be boxed in just to clean up a boundary. If services are being provided, and especially safety, if that's been worked out between the 2 entities, then I don't see a need to square up. And the only reason I brought this up is because I just want to make sure that if we're going forward as a body, that you guys know the history, and I think that's fair. And so I just wanted to have the conversation. Turn your mic on, please.
Yeah, I'd like to get a little education from Mr. Suggs before we go into these meetings, so I have a better comprehension of how this process works and what their attempted goals were with what our goals are and how they align, or if they align, so that, again, we seem to always attempt to go in with a united front on this commission, and I want to maintain that, so I want to understand the process if you have time to do that, Mr. Suggs.
Exactly, which is why I wanted to just bring that up in discussion.
Thank you.
And, I mean, they do send us the annexation notices. We just got one for like 16 acres that's going to be, and so we do get notified if they're annexing into the city on different properties, so we do get that. So I think the process works, and then if we have a reason to dispute it, we have the opportunity to do so. I don't think we ever have particularly. Again, it's up to the landowner. I mean, that's a choice they're making. Commissioner Newell, did you have anything?
Not a whole lot from my end. I'm assuming these workshops would be done, one with Palatka, one with Crescent City, one with Interlochen. How does this
Well, I don't
format
know
go?
that we haven't done them with the other municipalities as far as I know. I think, again, it would have to be,
We have Interlochen.
Oh, we have interlock, unless there's a specific subject matter. We just don't want to go in and
Sure.
set up a meeting and nothing get accomplished. If there's some goals that we're trying to work with together, if it's a matter of they just want to hear from us, then as the chair, I can go down, or you can go down since it's your district, and say, hey, we're here, what do you need from us? And have that kind of conversation. I'm glad to do that with all the municipalities, but I just think that I don't know that, if we have something specific to talk to them about, then yes, I would say let's have a meeting, which is what we're trying to do here with the city, is we had some specific items that's been brought up.
And I would appreciate that same little educational piece with staff, so I can get familiar with these issues with the city of Palatka, and I will reach out to Crescent City and see what issues might arise. And
So if
Commissioner
I'm- go
Newbold,
ahead.
if you don't
Yes.
mind, Madam Chair. I try to attend the town of Interlaken's meetings on a monthly basis, and I know Commissioner Pickens tried to do that. Some I don't know monthly, but as much as he possibly could. But just pop your head in the door and see if they have any issues. And again, if they do, we'll be glad to meet with them. I mean,
Yeah, I
we're
try
all
to
in
go
the
to
same
Palatka
boat, trying
ones,
to row
too.
in the same direction. But again, having meetings for meetings, if you have a specific purpose, they're good meetings.
And I think, mostly what they're looking for is support, whether they're applying for a grant or that kind of stuff, that they know that they can get a letter of support from us. So if I'm hearing correctly, we do want to have a meeting with City of Palatka, and that would in regards to economic development / extending utility boundaries without annexation, if they'll have that conversation with us. Potentially an interlocal agreement if we move forward with impact fees, and that would be basically it.
Okay, so will we create a formal agenda, or we rely on them, or will it be?
No, that we would have the meeting here, and it would be an agenda item, I believe, like a separate meeting. Ms. Young, did you have something?
So that we all understand, the impact fee discussion is only needed if the county desires to charge an impact on a city building
Yeah,
permit.
that's the way it was explained this morning.
Okay.
I think that's, only if there's a property that, and she actually said there was an out for that. She didn't say
No,
you had to do that.
So if we apply them to the city, it'll be the entire municipal boundary of the city, any building department with the city. If we're going to apply ours to theirs, a duplication. So we wouldn't get to pick and choose the ones on the outskirts or the ones in a geographical area.
Okay, so then I was not understanding that correctly.
That's what I was afraid of. Maybe and we've had meetings and meetings and meetings with them, so that's what I wanted to make sure we were crystal clear on the application here. So if the only thing that moves forward is a building permit in the unincorporated areas, you need no interlocal agreement with the city. If you're going to apply county impact fees on top of city impact fees, where there's a duplication of impact fees, then you need an interlocal agreement for how the duplication of impact fees are going to be spent.
Boy, that would be terrible.
Yes, and so, that would also.
As it relates to any service that would be cooperative, right? So transportation is an easy example. Fire rescue would not be, although rescue is. Some portion of general government would be, although some portion would not be. Parks and Rec would not, because the city has their own Parks and Rec. So we would then go through and determine which ones we were going to try to apply a county impact fee and a city impact fee to, and ones we wouldn't. For anyone we do, it's going to be across the board in the whole entire municipal boundaries of the city, and that's what you'd have to have an interlocal agreement on, as to how that's going to tie together.
Yeah, I mean,
does anybody have an idea of how often that actually happens in actual practice?
So it would be every single CO issued within the city of Palatka.
But I mean, I should have asked the contractor today that, how often do they see that in practice where they overlap with other municipalities?
Oh, I follow you. We can get
Yeah,
that
yeah.
answer. Or we can ask her in her professional opinion.
Yeah, I'd be
how
curious
many-
to know, 'cause
Do we have a duplication of?
It just
of
seems
fees?
like it's something to stay away from.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and what about the potential for a development that may straddle the boundary of the city and encroach into the unincorporated?
So it would fall by where the building permit is. If the permit location is in the 911 address inside the annex portion of the city, it would be a city impact fee. If the building permit falls where the unincorporated area is, then it would be the county's impact fee. But I just didn't want to get you guys too far down in Pandora's box if that wasn't your desire in the beginning.
I see what you're saying. So the example I used this morning was probably not a good example.
I don't think she understood what you were applying.
Fair enough. So we're going to discuss economic development and extending utilities. Is that good with everybody?
City of Palatka. Yes.
That'd be a great place to start.
Thank you, Nicole.
Okay.
I don't think we want to get it too contentious on the first meeting.
No, I do. That was the whole point.
Yes,
All right. I know that one of the subject matters that they've been wanting to bring up, and I'll just go ahead and put this out there since we've already almost done. They have wanted to discuss homelessness. We did have the person who's running the homeless coalition come in front of the Affordable Housing Committee and give us an update on what they're doing and some options. She is also asking to come to the next board meeting at the county to present, and I'll probably let her do that on the agenda. She had some different ways of maybe coming up with some ideas.
Who is that?
Her name's Georgia Mitchell. Yeah. 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 So anyway, I don't know that that's a subject matter we want to get into until we have more information. So, all right. Anything else to come before the board or for the greater good?
Yes, ma'am, if I can.
Please.
As you all know, we have a planned trip up to D.C. coming up to go up and meet with some of our federal folks up there on some of our projects, particularly the Army Corps with the barge port as well as our potable water project. And so we'll be meeting with some of our elected officials up there, most likely Senator Fine and Senator Scott and some others while we're up there. The schedule right now looks like it's going to be May 20th. That's a Tuesday going up, with meetings possibly on Wednesday and if necessary Thursday. As you know, we don't get our schedules until later. So we'll be looking at going up there that week. So if anybody's interested, I need to get your information if you plan to attend, so I can let our federal lobbyist know so he can arrange whatever transportation as well as meetings and space is going to be a premium while we're up there. So I just need to get a head count, and so this is a follow-up to our meetings that we've had up there last year as well.
Right.
Will you be making the reservations, or do we need to do that? Or
I'm going to wait and get back with Mr. Gaviton when I know who all will be wanting to attend, so we can make the reservations at one time. I will get the hotel information from Mr. Gaviton, and then we can make the reservation. I can make the reservation for everybody. It doesn't matter. That's
we do have a
fine.
Putnam County Development Authority meeting that morning, but we could, we can reschedule that. That's not an issue.
Yeah. Like I said, we spoke last night about 6 o'clock, so when I get more information, that's kind of where we're at right now.
So
it's
we
a
return-
fluid, it's always fluid, just like it is when we go to Tallahassee. We'll schedule days up there, but we won't have a schedule, until right before we leave. The 20th, most likely through the 22nd, late in the afternoon, fly back, or fly back the next morning, because like I said, we won't have our schedule set when we make the reservations, so we just have to be mindful of that.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Suggs, thank you for bringing that to our attention, and I would encourage, I know this is going to sound like a big bill, but truly when we go up there as a group, we make a big presence, and we usually come back with the bacon, if you will. So it's good for us to be seen. It's good for us to tell our story about Putnam County, and I look forward to that trip. I honestly do, for that reason, that we get to walk the halls of Congress and tell them about Putnam County.
Well, we got 2 major projects.
Yeah.
And the Werder project, which is our dredging project for the barge port, has been included now in both the House and the Senate. So now we're looking at funding. So I'm going to be meeting with, thanks to Commissioner Harvey, with some folks this Thursday from Senator Fine's office, and, Congressman Fine's office now. And one of the things that we'll be talking about is getting our appropriations request in. And they're due in May, and so we need to get that done sooner rather than later. That was a conversation with our lobbyists last night, so, we'll be working on that as well. But this is, this is the year that we need to push. We've gone up there before, and it was a good year to go up there and just say thank you, for all the help that we've received previous. This year's a request, and our project got moved from the CAP 107 funding level to the WRDA project, so now we need to go back up and push a little bit on getting some funding back into that project.
Right.
So.
I agree.
All right, thank you for your comments. Public comment on miscellaneous items. Is there anybody who has any public comments? I see a new person in the audience. Hi, Ethan. We have Ethan from the new planner. All right, thank you. With anything else? All right, this meeting's adjourned.